Hi everybody, today I want to talk about a concept idea for dinosaurs in DVD. This is the second concept for dinosaurs I'm doing, and we're using a Utah Raptor. The images you're going to be seeing are generated by AI. I kind of coached it quite a bit to try to get them fitting the ideas and concepts I'm talking about. I am not an artist. You can see the Gemini AI stamp on there. So, I mean, if there was an artist who actually wanted to do good work and, use this concept in any kind of way, go ahead. This is just the conceptual idea. The art doesn't really matter. It's, in this case, because it's AI art, and AI art doesn't matter. It's just to kind of get across an idea beyond words in case you're a visual person instead of a, verbal learning type person. So, the first question you might have is, why Utah Raptor? Why are we talking about Utah Raptor? Why not Velociraptor? Why not Jurassic Park? This is the size chart for Utah Raptor and some other types of raptor. Velociraptor is number 2. Velociraptor is scientifically about this size. So why are we talking about Utah Raptor? Well, one, if we're doing scientific, then Utah Raptor would be about here, right? That's about head height for a person. That seems like a more fitting, intimidating monster, I guess, for DVD. And you might say, well, Velociraptor's super iconic. And you're right. If we could get Velociraptor from Jurassic Park or Jurassic World or another Jurassic-type dino franchise, this would be totally cool. But dinosaurs are a scientific creature. They do exist. We don't necessarily need to have a license. So I'm going to be talking about this without assuming a particular license. We're just talking about mechanically what could a raptor look like. That's why we're going to be using the scientific Utah Raptor. We're going to distance from any potential licensing, because licensors, you might not get Jurassic World, you might not get Jurassic Park. You might not get specifically what we want here. And a bunch of that footage, a bunch of their designs, is probably copyrighted. So I'm not going to be using their designs for a video if they're copyrighted. We're not doing that. So that's why we're talking about Utah Raptor. This is very clearly not Jurassic Park. Not Jurassic Park's a raptor in design, in name. So we're just talking about the concept as a raptor. This could still apply if there was a license attached to this chapter, if it wouldn't be an original chapter. But talking about it as an original chapter gives it some standalone weight, might make it a little more likely if there's enough support, I guess, for a raptor-type monster. So as I was saying, Utah Raptor, out of the raptors scientifically, is one of the largest ones. There are a couple of other ones. You see Deinonychus is bigger than some of the others, but still kind of tiny according to this chart. So we're going to be using Utah. Cool. So, the idea behind what would a raptor look like in DVD is, first and foremost, it would be a third-person camera killer. You'd be able to look around, see your character, see your shoulders, etc. There'd be 2 modes. There'd be a tracking and a hunting mode. It would be a kind of like a scent-based tracker type thing. So in tracking mode, we're going to be seeing scent orbs, and hunting mode, we're going to be seeing blood orbs to fill specific things. When Utah Raptor tries to break a pallet, what happens is it jumps on the pallet and it breaks from the weight. So that will be our animation we're going to be using. Of course, because of this, Utah Raptor would end up maybe on the other side of the pallet in the process. So it would be a little bit different. He'd end up in a little bit of a different location than some of the other killers, just because of how the animation would probably be played out, and maybe where he'd end up after the animation completes. So there might be a little bit of weirdness there. But this is how I could reasonably see a raptor breaking a pallet. It's jumping on it and then it just collapses from the weight. It's not a very sturdy pallet. That might make some sense as his animation. And I'm saying he, I guess it could be a she. I guess this one probably is a she, because if you're going birds, birds probably have some sort of comb. So if we're using the AI images, this is probably a she. And then, Utah Raptor will have a pursuer ability in hunting mode once it fills a blood meter, which will let them vault, fast vault, or medium vault windows and pallets. And the window animation, instead of vaulting, it's going to be digging under, like that scene from Jurassic Park where they're all digging under the little building after the Ian Malcolm's kid, right? They're digging under. So that's what I thought of, because when it comes to window vaults, there's windows that don't have a top, there's windows that are in a building, so there's a lot of variation in that, and I think just having them dig under the window probably would be an easy way around, no matter what type of window vault it is. I mean, I guess there's window vaults off of buildings, so maybe you'd need 2 different vault animations, unless you could just, like, have it jump up on the edge and, like, perch on the edge and then jump off. You could maybe do something like that. It depends on how big the model is, I guess, and how big the window vaults are in comparison. Because this is a pretty big Raptor we're talking about, right? But, who knows, maybe they'd be able to figure something out with that. So in tracking mode, we have scent orbs and footstep tracking a la Alien. So like Alien, you'll get footstep tracking within a certain radius while you're on the map. So it'll be very interesting because you'll have that in your terror radius at all times, essentially, would be my bet. And then you'd have scent orbs, so you'd be building scent orbs to activate a stealth meter that'll give you 60 seconds of undetectable, and then it puts you into hunting mode. So in tracking mode, you can only do M1 bites, but it will do mangled, hemorrhaged, and unbroken for about 30 seconds, something like that. Well, so unbroken is for the 30 seconds, but the mangled and hemorrhage would last until healed, because obviously it doesn't make sense to have mangled and hemorrhage and unbroken because you can't be healing. So, like, they have to be at differing times, if you get what I'm saying. Otherwise, like, why have mangled and hemorrhage added on? So the mangled and hemorrhage lasts probably about twice as long. The unbroken is going to last 30. Now, these are just numbers. They could change. Some of this may or may not be good. Some of this may or may not be, like, 2 broken numbers, that kind of thing. So you get the 60 seconds of undetectable before being able to go in hunting mode. That might be too much. That might be too little. Because the idea is that the hunting mode is something that you have to build to. So after you max out your scent orbs, after you max out your stealth meter and you get the undetectable, you go into hunting mode. So that time it takes to build that might be one of those things that needs to be changed. There might be add-ons for it, that type of thing. Hunting mode. This is one you can actively choose to disable. If you want to go back to tracking mode, you can. Blood will be more vibrant, it'll stay longer, injured noises will be more audible. Blood orbs like Oni will appear, and that fills Pursuer. You get access to an M2 Pounce like Victor has, and you also get access to the Shift button. This is something that normally only survivors would have, and it would work just like a survivor would with full camera control, except there would be acceleration on this. So the longer you hold Shift, the more you'll accelerate and gain speed. There will be a speed gauge, and the reason that's important is because when you vault a pallet or you attack, you will vault and you will attack, so you will do the thing you're supposed to be doing, but that'll reset the speed meter and cause a skid or stumble animation that will increase in time with the fullness level of the speed gauge. So what that means is if your speed gauge is at the top it can be, and you're going after a survivor, you'll fast vault into that window, then you'll skid, and you'll skid for a pretty good distance, and like that skid animation will play. You'll skid for a longer distance than if you had like middle speed gauge and you vault, you do maybe a medium vault, and you skid for half of that distance. So that's kind of how that speed gauge would work, is that it's kind of the idea of the faster you're going, the more you're going to see you stop. So this would be a very interesting ability, because it would be one of the first, I guess, killers that can more or less kind of like control their speed and their camera in the exact same way that a survivor would, but they also can speed up and, like, essentially choose which speeds they want to go to. Once this pursuer ability is active, by the way, it stays active. And so if you decide to slow down at all, if you let go of shift, your speed gauge will slowly fall. So you'll start losing speed, and then you'll essentially, you can choose to press it again and just build back up speed. Now, of course, if you have let go of shift and your speed is falling, you will still do skid stumble animations. So, I think it would be very, very funny, by the way, if you try to do anything with max speed, like maybe you say there's like a red portion on the end of the speed gauge where if you go into that area and then you try to like do an action, then it like, you slam and you hit a wall. I think that would be pretty funny. Because you kind of see sometimes in like Jurassic Park, you get that where they like bounce into like windows and they break the glass and they stumble and they fall. So that's what we're kind of mimicking, right, with the speed gauge and that kind of thing. As I mentioned, animations would be pretty important. Pallet braking, my idea is you jump on, it collapses under the weight. Carrying would be dragging. Hooking would be like being swarmed by baby raptors. So the idea is that the babies are the ones who are like swarming, keeping them preoccupied, so the big other raptor can go off and do whatever, right? It kind of makes sense, I guess, in a way. Like, it makes at least a minimum amount of sense. Instead of, like, trying to carry and hook somebody, a raptor's not really going to do that. So hooks, when a raptor spawns in, are going to be replaced by nest objects. So a raptor would drag somebody off to the nest, the baby raptors would swarm them in the nest, and then the raptor can go do whatever else they're going to do. And as I said, window vaulting could be replaced by something like digging under window vault locations. This kind of depends on how big the window is, how big the raptor is, because you could just use regular window vaulting of hopping over the window depending on how big these things are. If that doesn't work, then maybe like digging under might be a decent idea. The only thing you'd have to worry about is vaulting off of one floor into another. Like a drop down, you know what I mean? That I haven't quite figured out. So that would be it. As for the enclosure tiles, this would be a new type of tile that would completely replace pallet gems and 4 lanes on a dinosaur-themed map. And the reason why I think this is important is that it would have like the layout maybe of a pallet gem or 4 lane, but the inner walls of those tiles would be like broken trees, giant bushes, that type of thing, like jungle-type foliage that's hard to see through, giant rocks. So, like, stuff like that, because these types of things I don't think would fit very well with a dinosaur-themed chapter aesthetic. I think that when it comes to, like, if you're going to have a Jurassic Park chapter, you need the big fences. You need specific tiles, you need, you know, everybody remembers the T-Rex breaking out of its enclosure. So, my idea is we take some of those elements, so you can have openings in the tiles that are like broken areas where the wires are, you can have, like, trees that have fallen into the enclosure, you can have stuff like that might give you more of like the type of layout of a pallet gem or 4 lane without it looking like a pallet gem or 4 lane. And so you can do stuff like that, and I'm kind of thinking that that you need these types of tiles, right? So when you're going around in this in the map for this chapter, instead of all of these weird walls and things and crates and other weird objects, none of those are spawning. What's spawning is enclosure tiles, rocks, trees, bush, that type of thing, right? And yeah, that's essentially all I really want to talk about with the idea. So y'all have a good day.